Hi everyone, thanks for coming. My name's Deb Kemp. I'm the Economic Development Coordinator at Northern Beaches Council, and this is the first of a series of ATO webinars that we're holding weekly between August and September to try and help local businesses get ready for tax time. We know that's a busy time and gearing up to October, and also this is a bit of an unprecedented time that a lot of people are experiencing in what they need to do to submit the tax forms and the new requirements. So I think it's a great opportunity to have people here together to run a webinar with the ATO. And we're very privileged to have here today Lyndon Regina, who is the Small Business Experience at the ATO office, who's going to run the webinar today. Just to let you know, we will be recording this webinar and we can make it available on our council website afterwards. So feel free to keep your camera on if you want, or take it off if you'd rather. We also will be having the chat box open. So again, if you've got any questions, please put them into the chat room and I'll try and monitor that as we go through and hopefully have a bit of an interactive session. So I know we've got a lot to get through today, so I'm going to hand over now to Lyndon. Thanks.
Thanks, Deb. I appreciate that. Hi, everyone. Welcome. It's great to have you on board, and a big shout out to our Northern Beaches people. I'm not far from you, but I'm certainly nowhere near the ocean. So look, let's kick this webinar off, starting a small business. It is really interactive, and it certainly gets you across those questions between running conducting a hobby and running a business. So look, firstly, I'd like to respectfully acknowledge the traditional owners and custodians of country throughout Australia and their continuing connection to land, waters and community. I'd like to pay my respects to them and their cultures, elders past and present. So look, the topics we're going to cover today is obviously not the preliminaries, but we'll go business versus hobby, business structures and registrations, and we're going to now, I love questions. So what I ask you to do is don't be shy, okay? This is your time to shine. So come on down into that chat box and put through your questions. Now, look, I don't claim to know everything in tax. If I did, I think I'd be worried. But, and plus, the tax landscape, as you know, via COVID is really fluid at the moment. We're seeing federal government coming out with lots of different stimulus messages to be able to assist you. Get up and running in a small business, run your business and do it successfully. So look, what we're going to start with to begin with, I'm going to pop some info into the chat box. These are our contact details. So since COVID hit, we've hit the ground running literally. We've had a lot of different people deployed over different business lines to be able to give you the assistance you need to be able to make it through COVID. So you've got our extended hours there for our contact centres. You've also got ATO Community. Have you heard of ATO Community? So if you were to head to ato.gov.au, you'd be able to see on the top, on the landing page, at the very top, there's the words ATO Community. Now, chances are your questions have already been asked, okay? And they've been answered. So if you were to head to ATO Community, you'd be able to find and immediately locate the answer. So that's going to save you a lot of time. All right. A bit of a feel for who's in the audience. And the reason why I like to do that is because it gives me an idea of how I can tailor this small business webinar for you. So I'm just picking up some info. I'm going to pop it into the chat box now. Tell me, who here has got a hobby? Perhaps you're thinking about starting your own business. You might even be running your own business, whether that be a small business in a different location, or perhaps you're running your small business from home. Come on down through the chat box, A, B, or even throw a C in there. Why not? Perhaps you got that home business. Look, whilst you're coming through, thanks Mark, thanks Sylvia. I really appreciate your answers there. I'm just going to pop in an email address address. And the reason why I do this is because often we come to these types of forums and we think, oh, I could have asked that question, I should have asked that question. Look, you might even wake up in the middle of the night and think, ding, I've got a tax question. But anyway, if you do, don't hesitate to send. And what I do ask is that you place attention, Lyndon, into the subject heading line so I can pick that up directly and get the question answered for you. So think of it as your direct contact straight into the tax office. I'm here to help. All right, let's get moving. She's a big package. We've got a lot to get through. So starting a small business. All right, so let's look at these questions. Where are you placed? Have you got a hobby? Are you in business? Do you know the difference between a hobby and a business? What registrations do you need? Do you have an ABN number, so an Australian business registration number? And how do you apply for that? Perhaps business structures. It's one of the most common questions I get when delivering face-to-face tax workshops around Sydney and New South Wales. And obviously via webinar. How do I know when to register for GST or pay-as-you-go withholding or pay-as-you-go instalments? How do I know I need those registrations? So that's what we're going to go through today. So look, we're going to start with an example of Eddie's bushwalking. So dear Eddie, he likes to bushwalk. He likes to get out on the trails, smell the fresh air, obviously keeping his social distancing up and alive. So he leads bushwalks for a number of teenagers. He's sometimes given a couple of dollars just to cover his fuel costs, but he works full time as a youth worker in a local community centre. He hasn't got any intention to expand his business. So Eddie, he's operating a hobby at the moment, okay? So let's look 12 months down the track. Eddie's bushwalking, the word of mouth is spread, as it does, like with these webinars, the word of mouth will spread. So quite accidentally over the last 12 months, Eddie's walking tours have greatly increased in demand. So Eddie's now accepting more walking tour requests. Look, there's no guarantee when the next tour is going to be. As you know, if you're in business, you don't know when that next call is going to come through. Eddie still doesn't have an intention to make a profit, although sometimes businesses do voluntarily pay him for his services. So what do you reckon? Do you think it's a hobby or do you think it's a business? So we're 12 months in, things have changed a bit. Eddie's, he's thinking about a website. He's thinking about perhaps I should get a van to be able to carry all these people out to those divine destinations. And let's use one of them on the North Shore around the Ku-ring-gai National Park. What a beautiful spot that is. Or perhaps you want to head up my way into the Blue Mountains. But do you think Eddie's going to be still running a hobby if he's getting paid? What do you reckon? I'll pop it into the chat box now. Tell me what you think. And don't be afraid to say you don't know, because that's why to learn away. Hang on, I'm just going to pop this into the chat box now. All right, so come on through. Do you think Eddie's still running a hobby if he's going to be getting paid for his businesses? All right, it sounds like some people are definitely on fire. And yeah, there's a couple of don't knows, but hey, you can't know everything about tax. Let's have a look. Let's see what the go is. So there are some questions that we can ask to help work out whether Eddie's turned his business into, or turned his hobby into a business. Let's have a bit of a look. Has Eddie got an intent to make a profit? Is his activity going to be regular? The size and scale of his business, is it just Eddie, or is Eddie going to hire someone perhaps? And also the biggest one, does Eddie have a business plan? I don't know if you know much about business plans, and you can Google business plans. One little tax tip that I will give you: don't bog yourself down with complications. Don't get too big too quick. A business plan is your plan. It's going to tell you how you're going to run your business. It's going to give you your intentions, your activity as to how regular it's going to be. It's going to give you an idea of your size and your scale. And it's also going to let you know if the hobby is actually being conducted as a business. So when we talk about this conducted as a business, that means the activity is planned, it's organised, it's carried out in a business-like manner. So such as keeping business records, account books, having separate bank accounts, operating from business premises, having licenses or qualifications, all those sort of things. So if none of this applies to Eddie at the moment, well, that's what he thinks, okay? Because Eddie's activities still indicate he has a hobby and not a business. He doesn't have any additional tax or reporting obligations. So before we continue with Eddie's story, I just want to get you across statement by supplier. What is that? Let's find out. So when businesses do voluntarily pay Eddie for his services, they may request his Australian business number. A business does this because they pay for a service. In turn, they want to be able to claim a tax deduction for their business for that service. If they don't quote the Australian business number, so the ABN number, the service provider can withhold 47% of the payment for tax purposes. So that's if you don't quote an ABN number. All right, so that means Eddie, look, he'd lose out on 47% of those payments. So it might just be worth his while to get an ABN if business is picking up. So in Eddie's situation at the moment, look, he doesn't need an ABN because, you know, he's kind of not running that business, but he still wants to get paid of all what is on offer. So let's have a little look at the criteria. That's what Eddie would fill out. Those two boxes on the screen, have a bit of a read by them. So he fills out the form, the state supplier gives this to the business that's paying him. By filling out this form, it means that he's supplying, doesn't have to withhold any amounts from his payments. He gets all the money, and the payer may be able to claim a tax deduction for the service. Win-win, huh? That's everybody winning. We like win-win. So look, let's have a bit of a look in regards to 12 months down the track. Let's see what Eddie's business is looking like. So after a year of occasionally taking youth groups on bushwalks, Eddie's getting quite a few big hits, lots of likes on Facebook. So he's realising that word of mouth is spreading between his friends, his relatives, and the local community organisations. So Eddie started to take groups on weekly bush tours and promoted his tours on a newly created website. That's his website down the bottom. And so he's also getting paid. So he's got a website, he's getting paid. He bought the van. He went and got a bit of finance and thought, yeah, you know what? I'm going to go buy a van. So it's looking very intentionally like Eddie's got a business. What do you think? What's your thoughts? Do you think he's got a business? Come on down. Do you still think this is a hobby? Let me know. Yes, I think this is a hobby. No, I think Eddie's gotten past the hobby, moved into the business. Come on through to the chat box. I'll be more than happy to look at your questions, at your answers. Keep those questions coming. I love the questions. If we look at, let's talk a little bit more about in relation to what he's, so he also took out insurance liability. So, you know, for the just in case someone stacked it down the mountain, fingers crossed they don't. So he he's a little bit worried about, you know, when people aren't used to bushwalking, you know, they can have accidents. So insurance is a great idea. So Eddie is working hard to meet the demand for his tours. He still works as the youth worker, but he now only works part-time. And that's a big key to all of this, because his tours now earn more than what his youth worker job does. So due to the increased demand, he's now planning on expanding by buying a larger vehicle, as he did, and transporting all those customers through to the mountains, or perhaps Ku-ring-gai National Park, who knows, anywhere around Australia, just not outside New South Wales at the moment, clearly. All right, so yeah, okay, running a business. So yeah, great answer, absolutely. So Eddie has got the intention to make a profit. His activity is becoming regular. His size and scale is growing because he's doing this more often. He's getting out there and he's having a crack, which is great. He's not sure about the business plan. And this is the one thing that we see a lot of businesses, that they've got it up here, but they actually need to have it on here. You need to visualize your business plan, because if you can't visualize something, how do you know where you've come from as to where you're going? And that's a really starting a small business. So is his business conducted as a business? Yep, sure is. So let's have a bit of a look at the business versus hobby tool. If you're still sitting there and, you know, scratching the old head thinking, I'm still not 100% sure, head to business.gov.au. Go to business versus hobby tool, because that's going to actually tell you in relation to, or it's going to give you a little bit more of an idea. It's going to give you the opportunity to be able to print that out as well. So also an important part to mention is, if you're an artist or a creative person and you're receiving or plan to receive money from creating things such as jewellery, paintings or baked, this tool, and this tool's really good because, as I said, you can print it out. And I don't mind printing stuff out. I'm a little bit of a tree person. I'm going to get better, I promise. All right, so let's summarise. Let's have a little bit of a look at the next screen. So if there's no single factor that determines if you are in business, but some of the factors you need to consider include, do you intend to make a profit? Or do you genuinely believe you will make a profit from the activity, even if you're unlikely to do so in the short term, especially during COVID? We understand that. So do you repeat similar types of activities? It's another question to ask yourself. Is the size or scale of your activity consistent with other businesses in your industry? And also, is your activity planned, organised? Is it carried out in a business type manner? So this may include keeping business records and account books, having a separate business bank account, operating from a business premise, having licenses or qualifications. Perhaps, you know, you might need a first aid certificate if you're working in a cafe industry or, you know, any other industry. So you may need certificates, you may need training. Perhaps you've registered for a business name, that's very common, or you've got an ABN number. So if you aren't in business yet, it's important to keep these factors in mind if your hobby activity changes or grows. Now, don't forget, come on down through that chat box. Be more than happy to answer any of your questions. Whilst I wait for anything coming through that chat box, let's drive on into business structures and registrations, because this steps it out. It makes it that little bit easier to make those decisions as to how you want to set up your business. So if you're in business, you're going to need an ABN, but we'll come back to that in a minute, because to get that, you need to know what business structure you're going to run your business under. The structure you choose will depend on the size and type of your business, your personal circumstances, and how much you plan to grow your business. Let's hope it's going to be a multi-million-dollar business. Wouldn't that be nice? So the four most common business structures, look, I'm just tapping it on the screen now. You've got sole trader, you've got your partnership, you've got your company, and you've got the trust. What's the difference between the four of them? Let's have a little bit of a look. The right structure for your business, look, it's important because it's going to determine your income tax obligations, it's going to determine your asset protection and ongoing costs. So the costs and complexity of each structure increases with the most simplest to operate and the trust being the most complex. I'll explain this a little bit later. We'll go into more detail. So businesses also need registrations. These are the types of registrations that your business may need. So what you can do, there are some common business registrations. You can see they're based on things like business activity, identity, whether you have employees, your business structure. Can also influence the registrations that you just may need. So let's go through each structure in a bit more detail to see what's involved with structures and registrations. I'm just going to leave that on the screen for the minute because I'd like to go back to Deb at Northern Beaches Council, and I'd like to find out, Deb, what's happening at Northern Beaches Council at the moment? What's happening during COVID? What are you looking at? I know it's very hard to plan, but what's the Northern Beaches Council planning for the next few months and how are they going to assist their small community? Down to you, Deb. You're on mute, my dear. You'll need to unmute. Hang on. Yep, you should be able to. Oh, I just muted you again. See, that's tech. Hashtag tech. Okay, you good to go?
I'm good to go. Thanks, Lyndon. So yes, Northern Beaches Council, in terms of how we've been supporting businesses through COVID, we were quite quickly at the end of March when it became declared a pandemic, we brought to the council a series of basically a business support package, which was primarily around fee waivers, so things where we had control like outdoor dining, environmental health inspections, also a hardship for business rates that could be applied for. So there were some of those financial initial burdens that we tried to address where we could. Following that, we've done more really around communication. We saw that our key role as council was trying to connect the business community. We've got one of the largest numbers of registered businesses in all of New South Wales, about 32,000 businesses, and really we saw that as our key role was just trying to keep that business community informed, and particularly to start with, there was constantly changing restrictions on what businesses could and couldn't do. So we started to do weekly and then fortnightly business newsletters called the Beaches Biz newsletter. So hopefully some of you already signed up to that, and I'll put a link up at the end for those of you who want to register for that. And that was really our key source of contact with the business community. We particularly connected them to the New South Wales government, who was providing an initial grant funding program, small business grants, and they've subsequently put out a business recovery grant. But it's also keeping them in the loop about the various support systems out there, webinars, restriction information, to make sure that the business community was as informed as it could be. We also have done a series of webinars, particularly around adapting and surviving, and it's covered a whole range of things about staying connected with your customer through social media, mental well-being for business owners. We know that's becoming an increasingly significant challenge for particularly small business owners. We also did one around food businesses, because that's quite a significant area for us, and how to access government grants, which was probably the most popular webinar, not surprisingly. What we're continuing to do is try and showcase how businesses have been successful in pivoting, because there's a lot of inspiring stories out there in the Northern Beaches, and really we feel part of our role is trying to get some of that positive messaging across to our business community. We've also been doing research. We've just completed a business recovery survey, trying to understand what are the key challenges for businesses and what additional support they need. And we're doing ongoing research in our town centres to understand the impact on the ground. So it's a dynamic program, and we obviously don't know what the next step is going to be with COVID, so we can only plan so far and ahead, but we really see our primary role as just trying to be that conduit with information to the business community and support them through this very challenging time.
Yeah, absolutely. And Northern Beaches Council, you're doing a fabulous job. You've got a robust reputation,
Yeah.
and it's really lovely to be able to be invited on these types of platforms to collaborate with Northern Beaches Council, and certainly support you and your community with everything you're going through. Now, you touched on COVID. I've got quite a few direct links to place into the chat box. Now, don't be afraid to pick up those links. Don't be afraid to copy them and keep them as one of your favourites. But look, we've got so much. The ATO's got so much support out there. We're bending over backwards in relation to everyone's inquiries around COVID. A lot of people, what happened when COVID hit, when the restrictions, or I should say, when the restrictions were applied to Australia, that was the 27th of March. Now, on the 27th of March, you may have heard of AusKey, and AusKey was hardwired to end on the 27th of March. So as you can imagine, everything hit really quickly. So people had to register for a new business portal to be able to lodge their tax obligations. And to be able to lodge their tax obligations meant that they may have been eligible for JobKeeper or Cash Flow Boost. So as you can imagine, with all the businesses we've got around Australia, we were very busy transitioning everyone to the MyGovID platform. And we've been able to help businesses in relation to tailoring payment arrangements, changing how you lodge and when you lodge. So some people were lodging quarterly. We went out to businesses and we said, you know what, if you need to lodge monthly so you can access your JobKeeper on a monthly basis, if that's going to assist you, you've got the ability to be able to do that. Obviously, T&Cs apply around all these different types of changes. However, if you don't ask, you don't know. And I'm a massive, massive believer in that. So look, throughout the webinar, I will pick up different things to pop into the chat box. For the minute, the most important things I'm just going to place in there at the moment is if you're experiencing financial difficulties, perhaps you're experiencing hardship, don't hesitate to reach out. We're there to support you. All right, let's drive on into the webinar. So let's look at solid Sista Mechanics. She's a sole trader. So I'll explain the business structures and registrations using different examples. Meet Margaret. So Maggie, as she's known as, she's a mechanic. She's got her own business, and she called her business Solid Sista Mechanics. Look, her business is really successful. Up until recently, she managed all the administrative paperwork itself. However, she does outsource her financial bookwork. So Maggie's got 2 employees, a mechanic and a fabricator. Maggie expects to make around $95,000 a year for the business. And as a sole trader, she only controls and manages the business as she seems fit. Maggie's her own boss, and this is the beautiful thing of being a sole trader. However, if anything was to go wrong, Maggie would be personally liable for any of the debts that she may incur. So what are some of the common business structures that would be needed in this situation? Let's take a look. So she'll use her personal tax file number when reporting to the ATO. Because Maggie's business is called Solid Sisters, she'll need to register her business name, okay? If she called her business name just Margaret Smith, so her legal name, she would not have to register a business name. Now, having a registered business name means Maggie will need to renew the registration policy periodically. Because she expects to make over that $75,000 a year, she's going to also need to register for GST. Now, she also pays pay-as-you-go instalments. Did you know that instead of having to wait for a bill, that bill from the tax office, you can actually register for pre-tax payments, and you can pay them at any time. So this is through pay-as-you-go instalments. So it just means pay-as-you-go instalments is, look, it's paying your tax throughout the year. So if you work out how much tax that you have to pay from the money that you've earned, you can put that aside in your business bank account and you can pay it through the pay-as-you-go instalment system. So that essentially means when you go and lodge your tax return, your tax bill's already paid, because you've already done it throughout the year through pay-as-you-go instalments. For more information, ato.gov.au/PAYGI, pay-as-you-go instalments. All right, let's have a little bit of a look at before I go on, Maggie also registered for pay-as-you-go withholding, because remember, she's got those 2 employees, so she needs to actually do tax withholding, and she needs to report via single touch payroll. Well, she will eventually. We'll talk more about that on other webinars. All right, let's have a little bit of a look in relation to how Maggie's going to lodge her tax obligations. So she used a personal tax file number and all of her business income in a tax return when she lodges it each year via Okay, she'll pay the tax at the individual tax rate, and she may be able to access the 13% small business income tax offset. So the offset is delivered as a non-refundable, which means it reduces the amount of tax you'll have to pay. It's not a cash refund. Okay, now this 13% has actually been increased. It used to be 8%. So since COVID's hit for the 2021 year, the federal government's turned around and kindly increased that to give us a little bit of a chance to 13%. All right, let's have a little bit of a look at our next structure. So let's look at Ashley and Kevin. They're brothers and they're both qualified wood turners. Look, they've recently entered into a partnership together to create and homewares. They rent an office where they meet with clients to discuss design options. The office has a large workshop attached to where they bring their designs to life. Gotta love that. So Ashley and Kevin manage all duties themselves, including the financial bookwork. They don't have any employees at the moment, but they may consider an administrative assistant in the future, look, just to help them with that increasing paperwork. As a partnership, look, Ashley and Kevin are both owners of the business and make decisions together on how the business, even though the business is new, look, it's been doing really, really well. Ashley and Kevin expect the business to make, hopefully, in excess of $85,000. They each have 50% share in the business. Okay, so Ashley owns 50%, Kevin owns 50% of the business. So that means that any bills or liabilities are split evenly if the business can't pay them. So that's an important part. Let me just there that it doesn't have to be 50-50%. It can be 20-80. It can be 60-40. It can be 10-90. Heck, I've seen 1% versus 99%. Look, it's all up to you. This is how you design your business structure. Let's have a bit of a look at what they're going to need. So they're going to need their ABN number to be able to run that partnership. The partnership's going to have a separate tax file number. Now, this question gets raised a lot in our face-to-face workshops that we run around the country outside of COVID. So a lot of people say, but can I use my tax file number? Well, no, a partnership has its separate tax file number, and Kevin will have his tax file number. He will have his tax file number. So there's 3 tax file numbers. So that essentially means at the end of the financial year, 3 tax returns need to be lodged. 1 for Ashley, 1 for Kevin, and 1 for the partnership. Okay, so let's go through that. They registered a business name because obviously they're not calling it their own name. They've varied the name to A and K Boyle Handmade Furniture registrations. They've registered for goods and services tax because they're making over $75,000. And they want to go into that pay-as-you-go instalment system because they don't want the debt, the tax debt, at the end of the financial year. Because as you can imagine, you went to business, it's your first year in business, you lodge your tax returns, and you end up with a bill. it's really hard to move forward into that second business year if your back's already up against the wall with a tax debt. So this is why we do recommend registering for pay-as-you-go installments. Pay your tax on the go. Give yourself a fair chance, okay? All right, so let's have a bit of a look at the annual income tax return reporting. Okay, so Catherine's asked a really interesting question. A great question, by the way. As a sole trader, how much do you earn to have to pay GST? It doesn't matter what entity type you are. It's up to $75,000. So every dollar, okay, every dollar that you earn, every dollar up to $75,000, you don't have to register for GST. However, any dollar earned over $75,000, yes, you need to register for GST. However, let me put an extra spin on it. So if you're starting up business and you're buying equipment for your business, let's use cake making. I don't know why I always use cake making, because anything with sugar in it, I burn. And let me tell you, the fire brigade know me quite well, because I really try to bake those cakes, but I don't have any luck. So a cake maker, right? They've gone and bought a cake mixer. They've gone and bought, you know, associated cake tins and trays, and perhaps they even bought an oven. So if you're going out to buy something that's solely and wholly for your business, right, you can actually claim the GST back on that. But be careful, because if you're going to use the cake maker or the oven for private purposes, you need to apportion. So perhaps you're doing 50% cake making and 50% cleaning up after the kids and being a great house husband or a great housewife, right? So you would only claim 50% for the business sake. We can talk about that more later, and if you have any questions around that, don't hesitate to email me at that email address. All right, Mark, let's have a look at your question. If you're starting a new sole trader business to reduce paperwork, oh, I love that word, reduce paperwork. That's good. Can you operate without an ABN? What initially is the least paperwork route? So if you are operating as a sole trader, you need an ABN, okay? You can't be a sole trader if you don't have an ABN number. So that's probably the most simplest form that I can tell you. But earlier in the webinar, remember we were talking about that statement by supplier? Have a look at ato.gov.au, statement by supplier. It's got a lot of information on there that will be able to help you. All right, great questions coming in. Kudos to you guys, going well. All right, let's have a little bit of a look. Remember when I was saying about the partnership and the tax returns? Yeah, so the partnership's got a tax file number. That's it there on your screen. So the partnership's going to lodge a tax return. The partnership's going to show that 100% of income that's been earned, yeah? Then Kevin's going to go and lodge his tax return through MyGov. Through MyGov. And Ashley's going to lodge his tax return via his MyTax via MyGov. Because it's 50-50, Ashley's going to show 50% of his income. Kevin's going to show 50% of his income. We're going to match that up to the partnership tax return. That's going to show 100% of the income. Okay, so it's pretty simple really when you look at it. Don't forget, eligible for the 13% small business income tax offset, and as I said before, previously that was 8%. So that's your federal government giving you a go. All right, so the partnership's lodged a tax return, Ashley's lodged his tax return, Kevin's lodged his tax return. Get the picture? Okay, let's move on. Let's look at companies. So companies. Let's look at Sue. And as you can see, you remember when I was saying the complexity, depending on what business structure you've got, it goes up. So you've got sole sister at the bottom, you know, she's pretty easy. She's got her own tax file number, her own ABN, she just lodges. Then you've got the partnership that has to lodge the 3 tax returns because there's 2 partners plus obviously in the partnership. So you've got 3 tax returns, 3 tax file numbers. Now, let's have a look at company. Let's look at Sue. So Sue's Bushtucker Catering company. The company rents a commercial kitchen to make and prepare all the food to cater for corporate functions using Indigenous ingredients, more commonly known as Bushtucker. And I'll tell you something, I love Bushtucker. I grew up in WA and I was very fortunate to have the opportunity to be exposed to a lot of Bushtucker. So Sue's business is becoming very successful with an increase of people wanting to taste and learn about traditional Indigenous cuisine. Sue manages all catering bookings and ordering supplies, but the company has a registered tax agent to manage the financial and the tax side of things. So the company has 3 employees in total, so that's 2 kitchen hands and obviously Sue herself. As her business structure is a company, Sue can be an employee of her company. Sue is also a director of the company. So Sue receives money from her company both as an employee and a director, if obviously the company makes a profit. It's expected that the company will probably make around $150,000 a year. So what registrations? Let's have a little bit of a look. So tax registrations, the first thing Sue's tax agent needed to do was register the company with the Australian Securities and Investments Commission, get that Australian company number and register the company name. Look, being registered with the Australian Securities and Investment Commissions, look, it's got its own set of annual fees, so you'll need to look into that. And obviously it's got its own reporting obligations as well. So Sue must ensure that she complies with all the rules. So the company also needs an Australian business number. It also needs its own tax file number, okay? As the company is expected to make, let's say, in excess of $150,000 a year, so she'll need to register GST. Don't forget, she's got those 2 plus herself, so essentially 3 employees. So she'll need to register for pay-as-you-go withholding as well. And obviously you've got your local council permits. Look, to find out more about local council permits, I've actually fortunately had a bit of a chance to look around business.gov.au of late, and I'll tell you something, their website is interactive, it's easy to find information, and it's easy to seek the answers to all of your questions. Obviously everything tax come to us, but everything permits and council and state government registrations, head to business.gov.au because it's definitely going to point you in the right direction. Let's drive on in. Let's see how the whole tax return works out for Sue's Bushtucker company. So, as I mentioned, the company has its own tax file number, and this is because the company lodges its own tax return each year. The company pays its fair share of tax at the company rate, which is different to the individual tax rate, okay? And you might want to check that out because those company tax rates are fluid and they're changing all the time. They've been reducing over the years. So Sue earns income from the company as both the employee and the director, as I said, if the company makes that profit. So the income is included in Sue's individual income tax return each year as she is taxed at the individual rate. Sue's not eligible for the small business income tax offset like the sole trader and the partnership structures. Okay, so let's have a little bit of a look at the chat box. We're looking good on the chat box. Before we move into trusts, let me just place this information in the chat box. I like to talk a bit about record keeping because record keeping is everything to your business. It gives you the visual, okay? It's going to show you how much you're earning, how much you're spending. Have you also heard of benchmarks? I'm going to pop it into the chat box now. This is a really, really handy tool. Go to ato.gov.au/benchmarks. Benchmarks is where the ATO has gone across all industry types, pretty much 99.9% industry types. And they've worked out what industry, say you're a cafe, they've worked out the average income and the average expenses that you would expect to run a cafe. Perhaps you're a dairy farmer. It's going to give you the guide in relation to how much you could think about earning and how much it's going to cost to run that business. So Benchmarks is a fabulous place to go to when you're starting up your small business. All right, let's just pop that red box now. Just bringing that across. There's a direct link. And also, if you're sitting there with your smartphone, my phone's here somewhere, everything's black. Phones are always black. There we go. So, have you heard about the ATO app? Yeah? Let me put a link into the chat box. If you haven't, may I suggest that you jump onto your phone now, listen to me, and tap away on your phone at the same time. Good luck. I struggle. ATO app is a great space to be able to record your income, your expenses, your business kilometres, take photos of those receipts that fade as soon as you walk out of the shop. I reckon I watched my Bunnings receipt fade within 5 minutes of entering my car back in summer. Although, you know, we do get 48 degrees out here. It's probably giving you a little bit of an idea of where I'm exactly located. But receipts do fade. And I used to be an auditor, and if I place my compliance hat on, I'm going to tell you right now, if you don't have proof of your receipts, of your expenditures, you can't claim it. So don't lose out. Claim what you're entitled to claim. And you can do that via the ATO app. All right, let's jump into trusts. Let's look at the Moreton and Albert Family Trust. So it is this business, it is a profitable business. It expects to make $180,000 a year. So they've decided that they'd like to set up a family trust so they can share their money with their family. And Albert have 5 children and 6 grandchildren between them, and they would like to provide for them. Moreton and Albert, look, they use a local tax agent, Ruby, as the trustee for the trust. Now, Moreton and Albert will continue to use Ruby's services to establish the trust. Ruby will be responsible for managing all of the trust's tax obligations, including registering the trust in the tax system and lodging that tax trust return. Now, I can't be clearer with this. If you're going to go down the line of setting up a company or setting up a trust, I strongly encourage that you seek professional advice, okay? Go and see a reputable tax agent and an accountant. Perhaps you might need help lodging your BASs. Go and find some help. You can go to practitioner website, so we call it the TPB, and you'll be able to find more information there. Another little hot tip, and I hear this all the time in my education seat, is talk to your family and friends, talk to other people thinking about getting into, or perhaps that you're already in. Who are they using? What works for them? But when I say what works for them, can I add what necessarily hasn't worked for one business doesn't necessarily mean it's not going to work for your business. But if you're trying to find that reputable tax agent comfortable with, to be able to work with, to be able to make your business a success, find out who's using who, because it's amazing word of mouth. And Google, well, Google's my best friend. I love Google reviews. It gives me a bit of a heads up as to what I'm getting into. So let's have a little bit of a look at the registrations. So on behalf of the trust, Ruby's required to apply for the Australian business number, and obviously the trust is going to have its own tax file number. So the trust is expected to make $180,000 a year. So Ruby must also register the trust for GST. The trust has no employees, so will not need any employer registrations. It may need other registrations. So all family members who receive money through the trust register for pay as you go instalments. So they're making their payments towards their income tax obligations throughout the year. Remember when I said tax on the go, it's all the rage. So this breaks down their expected tax bill into small amounts during the year, as I said, so they don't get that massive tax bill. All right, so before I'll come back to you, KBH. I'll just finish off this trust section of this. So before the trust can legally operate, the trust must have a compulsory legal document called a trust deed. Moreton and Albert engaged a solicitor to draw up the deed. So the trust deed includes things like name of the trust, the name of the trustee, the purpose of the reason for the trust, the rights and the obligations of the trust, and when and how much money will be given to the beneficiaries. So as the trustee, Ruby must follow the trust deeds and operate the trust on behalf of the beneficiaries. So Ruby can use the trust assets to cover any debts owed by the trust. So Ruby receives trust dividends and distributes the money evenly between the beneficiaries as set out in the trust deed. If all of the profit is not distributed to the trust, they're going to have to pay 47% tax on any money that hasn't been distributed. So that's the key. Don't keep money in a trust. Make sure it gets distributed. So the Moreton and Albert family have to declare the money they receive from the trust in their individual tax returns and pay tax. Each individual may also be eligible for the 13% small business income tax offset. Excuse me. All right, so let's have a bit of a look at the business structures. So one of the major benefits running a trust, just before I dash off from trusts, is the ability to distribute money that the trust makes to its beneficiaries. Sorry, I've got a bit of a... So this allows a trust to lawfully minimise the amount of tax it has to pay. Look, there are limitations. There's costs involved in setting up a trust. May I suggest that you would have a bit of a look at that. All right. Let's talk Australian Business Licence and Information Service. Deb, have you had a bit of a look at this site?
No, I haven't, but I'll have a look after this.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, this is a great site. So these examples that I've shown you goes through each business structure and what's expected, the registrations, how you would apply for them. A good way to check which registrations you're going to need is heading to this site, ablis.business.gov.au. All right, so let's do a bit of a summary. What have we learned today? So it's important that you understand the responsibilities of each structure because each structure you choose can affect, for example, the amount of tax you need to pay, the ongoing costs of running your business and how often and how much detail you need to report to the ATO, because that's really important. Let me just add, I'm mindful of the time. I run into a lot of businesses or a lot of people that say, I went to set up a business. I woke up one day and I just thought, yeah, I'm going to do a business. So I register for an ABN number, I register for GST, I register for pay-as-you-go withholding, I register for pay-as-you-go installments. 3 months' time, or in a quarter's time, all of a sudden you start receiving activity statements. And literally you look at them and you go, what's that? Don't worry, I'll just, I'll ditch that. In half a year's time, you're going to be getting more activity statements. You're going to be thinking, hang on, what's going on here? Why does the tax office keep sending me all this stuff? I haven't started trading yet. I'm only just thinking about my business. Then in about, who knows? I suppose I can't really put my thumb on it, but you're going to get a letter or a call from the tax office to say, why haven't you statements? And you're going to go, well, didn't you know I haven't started trading yet? No, we don't know. So my advice to you, best tip in the world, if you're going to start a business, start small, okay? Don't put too much pressure on yourself. If you don't need to register for anything, don't register. I mean, I am a big believer as installments because that means that you're not going to have that big tax bill at the end of the year. But besides that, if you don't need to register for GST, if you're a taxi driver or a ride source person, you're going to need to register for GST. There are terms and conditions around who registers for GST and who doesn't. Head to ato.gov.au/GST and it's got it all listed there. Okay, so We've looked at cost, we've looked at complexity. As you know, sole trader at the bottom, least cost, least complexity, and it builds up. So the further you go, partnership, company, trust, the more it's going to cost you, the more paperwork it's going to be involved. And I like to break things down easily. I don't like to dress it up and make it look all fancy, because at the end of the day, that's what it is. It's been simplified. All right, now just remember one last thing. I get a lot of questions around this. Can I change business structures at any time? You know what? Yes, you can. So if you start off as a sole trader, and we recommend that you know, business does start off as a sole trader if that's what you choose to do, because it's simplified. But if it's not working out, or you can benefit from your tax obligations, perhaps you know you want to go from a sole trader into a partnership because you want to split your costs and your income. Perhaps you want to go into a company because you like the look of those company tax rates. Just remember, the cost and the complexity grows as your structure grows. But yes, you can change at any stage. All right, so today we've looked at the difference between a hobby and a business. We've looked at what registrations you could possibly need. We've looked at, do I need an ABN number? How do I apply for an ABN number? And we've also looked at what you can do next. So coming up throughout this webinar series with the Northern Beaches Council, let me just give you a quick rundown. So on the 11th of August, we've got digital options for small business. We're going to go into lots of free digital options that the ATO offers that you can use to be able to make your business brilliant. We're also going to chat on the 18th of August, recording income and expenses for the hospitality industry. So it is an industry-specific webinar. Tell your friends, tell your family, get it out there, get on the blower. We've got a hospitality webinar coming your way, and it'll get you across all your tax obligations. On the 25th of August is going to see the introduction to business records. So we've had quite a few questions coming through. Hey, how can I get away from that manual system? Well, you know what? Tune in, 25th of August, introduction to business records. It's really going to help you get you across the line. On the 1st of September, running a home-based business. Oh, it's a top webinar. I tell you, it'll make the difference between you knowing what you can claim and what you can't claim, because chances are you're probably not claiming enough. Okay, so a home-based business, 1st of September. On the 8th of September, budgeting for your commitments. It's the biggest blunder that we all make. We always think, oh, budgeting will come along. On the 8th of the 9th, we're going to talk more about budgeting for your commitments. The 15th of the 9th, it's going to talk about cash flow. We're going to see how cash flow flows through your business. Remember when I was saying to you, income coming in, expenses going out, visualize it. This is going to teach you how to visualize it. We've got some really simple ways of being able to do that. And on the 22nd of the 9th, we're going to touch on becoming an employer. So what's your obligations? If you become an employer, what do you need to do? All right, so look, the ATO's everywhere. And I don't say that with a grin, but we literally are. We're everywhere. We're on Facebook. We love you posting on Facebook. We love getting a cheeky Twitter from you, a cheeky tweet. I think they're the words, they're the modern day words now. We're all across LinkedIn. We're on YouTube. So I'm sure you've already been on your little, your smartphone, and you've looked up on YouTube how to, because I know I had to do it the other day when I was using an Excel spreadsheet, and it helped me tremendously. But the same goes with the ATO. If you want to know how to fill out an activity statement, you want to know how to do stuff in the tax space, head to YouTube. Alternatively, we're available on 132866. I've given you the contact hours. We are open Monday to Friday. We are open Saturdays and Sundays. That could be subject to change at this stage. But look, that's Linda and Regina signing out from Starting a Small Business webinar. A tremendous, massive kudos, thanks goes out to the Northern Beaches. It's been great to be able to co-host this webinar, and I'm very much looking forward to seeing you again on the 11th of August. Back to you, Deb.
Okay, thanks very much, Lyndon. I don't know if you can see, I've just put up a poll. If people could just take a moment just to let us know how satisfied you are with this webinar. As Lyndon said, this is actually our first one of a series of 8 weekly ATO webinars, so feedback's very much appreciated. I can see there were a couple of questions in the chat room around sole traders, so I don't know if, Lyndon, if you want to answer those or whether you want to get back to people individually, but certainly there seem to be a few questions there around particularly the earning thresholds and being a sole trader and the registering your business. Can you advertise your business without it being registered? So I don't know if you want to comment on those quickly or...
Yeah, look, I will comment on these quickly, but there's great links I can send you. So if you would like to send me an email, allow me to pick up my email address. Actually, you know what? I know it off the top of my head. I'll type it in. I'll be daring and talk and type at the same time. So send me an email. Can you just copy and paste these questions into the email, send it through to me, and I will reply to you directly with some links. So it's sbtalk@ato.gov.au, and I ask that you place attention Lyndon in the subject heading line, because that means that I can directly pick up your questions and I will happily answer them with lots of fun tax information for you.
That would be great. And Lyndon, I will send all of the people who registered, I will send you all an email, again, just providing some of those links which are in the chat room, links to our council website where you can get more information on how we're supporting business and sign up to our business newsletter if you haven't already done so. And I'll include in that email address, Lyndon, so that people can get back to you with specific questions.
Yeah, look, that would be absolutely fantastic. And once again, thanks a million, guys. I've had a ball. It's been a wrap, and I'll be looking forward to bringing more tax information to your space super soon.
Fantastic. Thanks again, Lyndon, and I hope to see you at some of the forthcoming webinars, everyone. Thanks very much for your time.
Bye for now.